What is up, internet? My name is Cam, owner, founder of CK Collective. This is Three Questions Podcast, episode number 14. I'm very pleased. I'm getting a lot of really good feedback. I just hosted my first guest in episode 13. If you haven't listened to that, if you're watching on YouTube, I have yet another black eye that I got from a mosh pit last week. It's been about a month of black eye stuff. As it is, I do have a sponsor. I do have his thing. I will read that on episode 15. Thank you, Howie of Ad Sciences, for sponsoring the first couple episodes of Three Questions Podcast. Again, I hope this podcast has been really helpful for you. For those listening, I know it's a lot of current and former clients, friends and family, of course, and I couldn't be more grateful. This podcast, I am going to be getting many more guests onto it, answering questions from their experience. It's not always going to be my 2 cents. I will mix in some solo episodes when I do have time to record these. I started this podcast because I think there's a lot of really good questions out there that I look up, especially, and I know a lot of my clients have asked me. So this is sort of a pseudo thing in between my coaching and consulting for clients to listen to, hopefully garner a little bit of wisdom outside of our sessions, outside of our meetings, texts, calls, whatever. If you are looking to become a client, 2 ways you can work with me. ckcollective.co is my website. I offer personalized coaching and consulting sessions if you are working on things personally and or professionally, if you want to work on both. If you are thinking about building a business or have a small business or want to get better at your own business or side project, I have CMO for Hire. That is the Chief Marketing Officer for Hire. One-time fee. You can text me, you can call me, you can set up weekly meetings. 30 minutes. We work on one thing at a time to better your business. Anyways, my name is Cam King. I'm an entrepreneur, owner, founder of CK Collective, and this podcast is for you. So I want to hop right into the questions. I have 3 questions from Chris from Massachusetts. First question, I'm going to start my timer and read it. Ready, set, go. First question from Chris. What motivated you to start this podcast? This is going to be relatively short, Chris. I think I've always been an entrepreneur. I have always wanted to put content out there. I've always been afraid to. And I think that internally has really focused me to look up a lot of things. When I don't know something, I Google it. When I am curious about something in the middle of the night, I roll over, I Google it. I will find answers to questions I didn't know I had that sort of come to me from the ethereal realm or the universe or whatever. I am such an inquisitive person. And I don't know if that's an affliction or a disease or some sort of tick, but I am so curious about information all the time. I want to know things. I'm such a curious learner, and I'm grateful for my parents for instilling that within me. I remember in 3rd grade, there was it Pearly Elementary School? I'm pretty sure it was Pearly Elementary School in Georgetown, Massachusetts, but there was some sort of book reading contest, and I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I think the second place person read like 20 or 30 books in this, 1 or 2 month or 3 month time span. I read 395 books, no lie. I don't know what kind of books they were. I think there was some sort of, hey, it needs to be this amount of pages and it can't be a picture book and your parents need to sign off. I read 395 damn books when I was in 3rd grade. So as far as I know, it's always been this way for me. And when I finally got to a point where I was like, wow, okay, I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm reading a lot of books. I'm watching a lot of content. At some point, I was really consuming about 80% of content, and I was only about producing maybe 20% into my own business or my own side projects. And I read something from another content producer that I really liked, and it was about the Pareto principle, about how if you're a producer, you should be producing 80% of the time and maybe recording or interpreting new information about 20% of the time. And I realized at that point that ratio had been flipped for me, and I had been consuming for so many years. And then I finally read another book that was like, hey, when you try to teach these things, you reinforce your own learning patterns, right? So if you learn something, hey, that's cool, you can retain that information. But when you teach it is really when you cement that information into yourself for life. So for me, this is a hybrid approach to helping clients who want to submit questions that maybe we're not working together. Maybe it's from potential clients. Maybe it's from people who just want a neutral answer on something. And for me, it's a way to teach it. It's a way for me to look up other information, disseminate information from current clients to former clients, and vice versa. And I think it's turning out really good. I have no interest in going viral. I have no interest in becoming famous or more of a influencer in today's world. But I think when we focus on becoming the rising tide that lifts all ships, that is better men, better women, better people, better individuals. I think when we really do lift all of those around us, we lift our neighborhoods up, we lift our communities, our companies, our wives, our children, our husbands, whoever. Okay. I think when you learn, you become a better person. And that is always a good thing in my book. So that is really why I started this podcast. And if you have questions or want to talk about that, we can, of course, talk about that offline. Question number 2. I'm going to reset my watch. Question number 2. What is your best advice? Oh, sorry, that's question number 3. Question number 2, excuse me. What are your recommendations for breaking a habit and trying to change one's ways for good? What are your recommendations for someone trying to break a habit and change their ways for good? Okay, so for someone that is trying to change a habit, you need to understand, if you've been doing something for 7 years, it's going to take you 7 years to break that habit. Your body is so focused on equilibrium, and your mind. Okay, so 7 years in, 7 years out. Okay, if you've been doing whatever, drugs for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, it is going to take you that long just to reclaim your own equilibrium. Your body works on this homeostasis principle, and it cannot be shortcutted. And I think that's what causes so many damn problems in today's society, is everyone is looking for the shortcut. Okay, everyone wants to put in minimal work and get maximal effort. Kids are getting out of high school and they want to become famous influencers because they see that's the fastest way to getting successful, becoming a CEO, not having to work for somebody else. There are no shortcuts. And if there are shortcuts, they're bad ones. Okay, it is going to make you have to go back and redo that work over a longer period of time. If you're trying to break a habit, owning it and admitting it to yourself and to others. Hey, I'm having a problem with drugs. Hey, I'm having a problem with alcohol. Hey, I'm having a problem being focused and disciplined. Okay, how have I been? You need to admit the problem to yourself. You don't necessarily maybe need to put all of your dirty laundry out there, but holy shit, admitting your problem and understanding, hey, I've been doing this for this long. Yeah, that's bad. Okay, what are we going to do to sort of change this? In order to change it, you need to understand how the dopamine reward system works. Okay, the reason why you've been doing that bad thing for so long is partly because, sorry, my dog's just scratching herself. Classic. Part of the reason why you've been doing these bad things for so long, this negative habit maybe, is because you have been getting some sort of feel-good reward from it, whether that's dopamine or whatever. When you do drugs, parts of your brain lights up and it gives you a reward. That sort of dopamine really hits you. Okay. When you drink alcohol, when you have sex, when you do whatever, even if it's a negative habit, your brain still rewards you for doing that thing because it likes that thing. It makes you feel good at some level. When you do that thing too often, okay, when you do that habit too often, you need more of that thing in order to get that initial amount of dopamine that you first had when you first did that thing, if that makes sense. That is why you do that more frequently. That is why you keep checking Instagram. Normally, when you check Instagram for that first time in the day, you get the most dopamine hits. And then consecutively throughout the day, it gets less and less and less and less. And then you check it more often and more often and more often because you're trying to get that same sort of hit of dopamine. You need to understand this process too. When you overflow your dopamine circuits, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter, I've talked about this on several podcasts already. When you overwhelm these dopamine circuits, okay, anytime you are not feeling an overwhelm of dopamine, your brain experiences that as a loss, as anxiety, as depression. It does not feel good, okay? And your brain doesn't really like that. So if you are trying to change a habit, the first thing to do is to starve that neural connection. You have got to completely starve that. Stop that thing cold turkey for as long as you have been doing that thing. If you have been drinking heavily for the past 2 or 3 years, stop drinking for 2 or 3 years. Get your body back to complete homeostasis and starve that. There is no other way. There is no shortcut for these sorts of things. Okay. If you are doing a myriad, and this is really where it gets complicated. If you are doing a myriad of these things, multiple things, if you are drinking, if you are doing drugs, if you're engaging in illicit sex, if you're gambling, and you want to stop all of these things, it makes it very difficult to stop all of these things at once. Because when you stop doing all of these things at once, your loss of dopamine from these things completely overwhelms you. Okay. And then you experience withdrawal symptoms. And we all know what that sort of thing can feel like. Okay. It's the same way, except it's the gnarliest hangover of all time. If you are trying to break a habit, your best option is to switch it with doing something good. Okay. If you're used to going out every single Friday night, Saturday night, getting loaded, doing drugs, buying whatever, go volunteer at a soup kitchen. You have got to swap it for something good, something that is going to give you endorphins. Go to the gym Friday night. Okay. Go volunteer. Go pick up trash from 8 to 10 p.m. on a Friday night. Okay. Then go home. Go out to the movies. Plan a date. Plan a bro date. Go visit old people in old folks' homes. You have got to replace that negative habit with something good that is longer lasting. And you have got to do that thing for as long as you have been doing that negative habit. I am up at 5 minutes. I wish I could talk about that more, but hopefully, Chris, you understand a little bit of that. You have got to replace it with something good. Question number 3. I'm going to take a deep breath here because that last one was heavy. It was a lot. Question number 3. What is your best advice to help mend potentially broken relationships because of actions I am accountable for? Let me read that again. What is your best advice to help to mend potentially broken relationships because of actions that I am accountable for? Chris, I think you have the answer in that question yourself. I am accountable for broken relationships. What advice do you have? That is the essence of the question. I am accountable for some of the broken relationships I have in my life. What can I do to mend these? Number one, when you hurt someone, you can't take it back. It's good that you have already been accountable for these things. And I know you know this, Chris, but when you do things, unfortunately, we can't take things back. I personally have said things to the people that I love and I care about, and I've hurt them. I've hurt friends. I've hurt girlfriends, loved ones with things that I've said, and you cannot take those things back. You are a human being. So the best thing that you can do right now, my only advice, is to forgive yourself once and to forgive yourself for saying that thing, understanding that that was an old version of you. You have to work on recreating a new version of you. Okay. If someone chooses not to have you in their life anymore, this is for anybody, of course, you have got to honor that request. Okay. If someone says, hey, I'm not interested. Hey, I don't want to be your friend. Hey, you're not making me feel good. Hey, I don't want to interact with you. No offense. I don't want to hang out. Number one, that's a societal issue right now, is that people are not able to speak clearly and set proper boundaries. Hey man, I don't really like what you said there. I don't want to be friends with you anymore. People can't say stuff like that. Women especially, I'm calling you out, females. You have a hard time hurting people unless you've been hurt. And that can come off as being vengeful, but it's not. It's just sort of feminine nature for the most part. Women don't like to hurt other people if they don't have to. Okay, they tend to be very passive aggressive or hidden with some of their actions or intents. And what I'll say there is, the better that you can set a boundary, this is for any human being, the better that you can set a boundary, own that. Hey, I said that. I know it hurt your feelings and I am terribly sorry. And, I would like your forgiveness. Asking once is fine, right? But begging someone to sort of have them open up space for you to be back in their life is not a healthy thing for you. Sometimes if you hurt people, you have to honor their request by letting those people walk out. Okay. And if and when they're ready, they will approach you. Okay. But you have got to honor the request. Everyone in life is crisscrossing, going 1,000 different ways. It's like the Big Bang. Okay. You can't control somebody else's orbit. You cannot get in front of somebody else's destiny and where they go and what they want to do and who they want to interact with in their life. You cannot control and manipulate that. The only person that you can be accountable for is yourself. And the minute that you try to get somebody else to do things or to talk to them, you are manipulating and not honoring somebody else's request to live in their own solidarity of their own life. And I think when it comes to my advice to potentially mend broken relationships, my advice would be to let people walk. Let people walk from your life. This is for anybody. I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel bad about that. But if you say something or if somebody hurts you, vice versa, you need to have the strength to walk away from that person. And you need to, if you said something bad or did something bad, you need to forgive yourself. And if it takes multiple days, weeks, months, years of self-forgiveness, that is the only thing that you can work on. Okay. I have had relationships where I have said regrettable things, right? And those women walked away from me. And I have chosen to honor the time I had with them. And I honor their choice to walk away. And I think I am grateful now for the times and the memories and the lessons that I shared with those individuals. and I cherish them. I don't look poorly back on it. I hold no resentment, and I still carry a lot of love for those people, but I'm not trying to manipulate those people to come back into my life. If they ever choose to, sure, maybe we can revisit it and perhaps we can be friends at some point. I don't really know, but I am not trying to manipulate that outcome. And I think if you truly want to be accountable for some things that you have said and caused in terms of broken relationships, forgive yourself once, twice, as many times as you need to, but you have got to honor the request of other people to walk away and choose to live their own lives. Okay. You never know who you're going to meet down the road, but you have got to walk your own path. And the more time that you spend looking where somebody else is going and what they're doing and trying to fit yourself into their life, that is less time that you are focusing on your life and getting ahead and figuring out what's next for you. Okay. That's all the time I have for that question. This has been episode 14 of 3 Questions Podcast. My name is Cam. You can reach me at info@ckcollective.co or 3 Questions Podcast at gmail.com. The Instagram for this podcast is _3 Questions Podcast. Please submit questions there via DM. You can also send it via email, or you can find 3 Questions Podcast on ckcollective.co. Again, 2 ways you can work with me: paid coaching sessions, hourly, recordable on Zoom with WhatsApp coaching, if you're interested, business, personal relationships, whatever it is. We'll talk about all the stuff. I will give you tips and tricks to live a better life. And then CMO for hire. If you're starting a business or have a business, there's no better product on the internet. I have looked. There's nothing like this as well. So reach out to me. Let me know what else you guys want to know. I am coming a little short on questions, so please submit some. I would love to see what else you guys have. And if you want to be a guest, you know how to reach me via the links. Okay. Have a great night. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I appreciate you guys. See you in the next one.